Hey guys, what's up? I'm Ershad from Mr. Phone, and today I'm not in front of camera, but I have three phones with me right now. And as you must have seen from the title itself, I'm going to be comparing the new Snapdragon 765 inside the Vivo X50 Pro against the other top mid-range contenders. Now we have the Snapdragon 730G inside the POCO X2 and of course the Helio G90T from MediaTek inside the Redmi Note 8 Pro. So what are we waiting for? Without any further ado, let's get this video started. But before we move on, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified whenever Mr. Phone puts out an awesome new tech video. Alright, so we're going to start off our test with running AnTuTu on all the three phones. Alright, so now AnTuTu is running on all the three phones now. What I'm going to be doing specifically is actually running AnTuTu thrice and then getting out a median score in the end for you guys to see which one of these phones actually does well. Obviously, we expect the Snapdragon 765 to do well, but how much is the difference is something that we want to test out today. One of the things that I really want to talk about is that the Snapdragon 765, despite being a super mid-range chipset, is the only one that comes with 5G support compared to the other two which comes with 4G support. So that's definitely an advantage on the Snapdragon 765 front. So therefore it makes a phone like the Vivo X50 Pro future proof and will be ready for 5G when it starts in India. I don't know when that is going to happen, but whenever it does, the X50 Pro will be ready for it. Alright, so we've done with the first round of AnTuTu testing. At least the first phone is done. So we have the Snapdragon 765 on the Vivo X50 Pro coming up on top with excellent CPU scores and GPU scores, and you can see that it's crossed the 3 lakh benchmark number. Obviously, it's higher than the 730G and the G90T in many parameters, including the GPU and the CPU performance as well. Having said that, when it comes to the GPU performance, the G90T is definitely higher than the POCO X2, which runs 730G. So what we're going to be doing next is running this again. So let's just do that. Alright, so now we're going to be running the second round of AnTuTu. So let me just close the apps in the background once again. Just to ensure that we have a clean RAM process running right now so that we can run it. Alright, so in our second test, once again, the Snapdragon 765G has come out on top, and it seems to be the score is much higher than the first one, so that's really good. And the score is higher once again on the POCO X2 as well. Plus, it is higher, slightly higher on the Redmi Note 8 Pro with the G90T as well. Once again, of course, the Snapdragon 765 is up on top with the G90T coming in second and the 730G coming in third. Alright, so now we're going to be running AnTuTu for one last time. Again, as usual, let's just quickly close all the apps in the background so that the system is clean and run AnTuTu once again. Alright, so we are done with our final AnTuTu run, and obviously once again the 765G has come out on top. No surprises there. But what I noticed is that the POCO score has gone down slightly. And of course the G90T on the Redmi Note 8 Pro has gone down slightly as well. One of the things that I need to clearly mention out here is that the 765G comes with a 7nm fabrication process, the 730G comes with an 8nm fabrication process, whereas the G90T has the largest die of 12nm. What this means is that the power efficiency on the G90T is not going to be great. So if you want great battery performance, then you need to look at something from Snapdragon, because that will definitely be better. So now in the next run, we're going to be running Geekbench to just test out the CPU performance. Actually, you know what, before I just run the Geekbench test, I have the, a heat gun with me. We can actually test out what the temperature of these phones are after 3 runs of AnTuTu, because it should definitely be hotter. Which one is the hottest of the 3? So, of course, the Vivo is at around 39.2. So I see around 39.8, almost 40 degrees. Yep, that's high. The POCO X2 is at 38.3, 38.4. So that's definitely lower than the Vivo. The max I'm seeing is 38.6. All right. And finally, the Redmi Note 8 Pro is also at around 39.45 and 39. Anyway, I'm going to be testing out the temperature when I play PUBG as well. But for now, this is what we see. Alright, so let's move from one test to another. We're now moving from AnTuTu to Geekbench. Let's start Geekbench on all the three phones. I have removed all the apps in the background process. Alright, so now we have Geekbench started on all the three phones. Let's quickly run CPU benchmark and start this test. Know that Geekbench is actually only a CPU intensive test, which will give us single core and multi-core performance scores for all the three phones. Obviously, once again, I'm expecting the Snapdragon 765G to come out on top, and I don't think that should change either, but I want to see what kind of difference in scores is what you get on your screen. Alright, so our first run of Geekbench is over, and as you can see, the single core score right now is 622 and the multi-core score is 1892. Anyway, compared to the single core score and the multi-core score of the 765G, the 730G has a lower score, and it's much lower actually. It's at least a good 120-25 points lower on the single core score, and of course the multi-core score is also much lower. Obviously the G90T is the lowest of the lot, and I think that the 765G is much powerful, much more powerful when it comes to CPU performance. Let's run this again and find out how these phones can perform. Alright, so now we're done with our second run of Geekbench on the phones. Again, the 765G finished first, and you have a single core score of 622, which is the same as last time. So the scores are not too different, and we just see that the 730G also ends its run, and the score is actually much lower now on the 730G. So it looks like the 765G seems to be keeping up with the first score that we got, so that's really good. Let's see where the G90T stands in comparison to its previous results. Again, much lower. The G90T has scored a much lower point, giving the 765G a sizable lead over the other two phones. In fact, the score difference is quite a lot. Alright, so now we're going to be running our second run of Geekbench on the phones. Let's just do that quickly. Alright, there are no apps running in the background, so that's good. So running CPU benchmark right now. Obviously, I'm not expecting anything to change, but I want to see if there is any fluctuation in score, and if the fluctuation is a lot or is it a little less. Alright, so we're done with the third run of Geekbench on the Snapdragon 765. Of course, it's come out on top once again, and the score is not too different either. It's just 1 point lower on single core and not too different on the multi-core score either. So I'm just waiting for 730G and the G90T to end. I am guessing that the scores will be lower. Yep, it is lower, but not too bad. I mean, it's almost in the ballpark range. Let's hope that the G90T doesn't go even lower than last time around, yeah, because then that would be really bad. And finally, we're done testing on the G90T as well. Again, the score is much lower, but again, it's the second run and the third run were almost on par. So yeah, like I mentioned, the 765G seems to be a much more stable processor with sustained performance. So what you'd see on your screens right now is like a final tally average of all the three phones. So the 765G is clearly quite a big leap when it comes to CPU performance. Not necessarily GPU performance, but yeah, I mean, in Geekbench, you can see that it is better than the 730G and the G90T. And one of the things that I really noticed and I really appreciate is the fact that the 765G definitely comes with a smaller 7nm fabrication process, and therefore, of course, the power efficiency and of course the sustained performance seems to be much better. Now coming back to the phones themselves, now that we've run Geekbench, just for fun, let's quickly take a look at the temperatures. I don't think that the temperatures should be too drastically bad this time around compared to AnTuTu, because AnTuTu runs some heavy 3D runs. So yeah, so look at this, it's around the 37.6, and now I can see that at the lower half of the X50 Pro seems to get hotter. Even last time, that was the area that touched 40 degrees. So I'm seeing 38.1 degrees. On the POCO X2, I see 36.9. That was the maximum. All right, so yep, 37.5 around the camera module area. Let me just see the camera module area. Seems to be not that hot. And now on the Redmi Note 8 Pro, you get 37.3. All right, it seems to be hotter on the POCO X2 because of course the Redmi Note 8 Pro is not taxing its CPU too much in the Geekbench run. The POCO X2 is definitely taxing it a lot. And of course, no doubt about it, that the Vivo definitely taxes it even more. Alright, so now we're going to be moving to our gaming test. Unfortunately, Geekbench is not working on the Snapdragon 765 toting Vivo X50 Pro properly. It kept crashing on me a couple of times, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show you guys any FPS data or FPS stability scores. But what I'll do is I will share what the settings of the game PUBG and Call of Duty are on Snapdragon 765G and compare it to the 730G and the G90T, and of course also play Call of Duty for 30 minutes to find out how it performs on each phone and of course each processor. So let's quickly take a look at what settings can PUBG run at on the Snapdragon 765G toting Vivo X50 Pro. Let's take a look at it. Alright, so we're into the game. Let me quickly jump into the graphics settings and show you guys what it can achieve. So currently you can see smooth and extreme possible on the X50 Pro, but I'm guessing you can go to HDR and Ultra. Now let's quickly jump to Call of Duty because this was just to check the graphics performance that is possible on the 765G. Now we're moving on to Call of Duty, which is one of my favorite games for Android and iOS right now. Alright, so we're now into Call of Duty, so let's quickly take a look at what graphic settings that you can achieve. So you can do very high and very high, but if you hit high, then you can go up to a frame rate of max. Unfortunately, we're not clear about what these frame rates mean and if they are exactly 40 FPS or 60 FPS like we know on PUBG. But I'm going to be playing the game at maximum frame rate and not maximum graphic quality. So the maximum graphic quality on max frame rate is going to be high. So one of the things that I'm also going to do after 30 minutes of gaming is check the temperature of the phone. So that'll give us an idea of how hot it gets. Alright, so now we are halfway into the game and you can see that it's beyond 15 minutes, and what I've noticed is that it sort of stuck for 1 second in between, but that was not like a lag, but it's generally been a very lag-free experience. Plus the the experience of playing the game is almost as good as playing on a Snapdragon 855 Plus or a 865 phone, but obviously you don't get the kind of high quality graphics. Having said that, the phone is getting slightly warm. It's not entirely hot though, but we'll see that at the end of 30 minutes. So we are close to the end of the session of Call of Duty on the Snapdragon 765G. It is a gaming chip and therefore I had extremely great experience playing the game on the phone. Obviously there was one specific freeze that I did talk about, but no major lags or frame drops whatsoever. In fact, if you don't want extreme graphics and extreme frame rates, then the performance is on par with something like the Snapdragon 855 Plus or even the Snapdragon 865. Most gamers who can't really discern the difference won't be able to tell either. The performance is actually very good on the Snapdragon 765G, which is there inside the X50 Pro. Alright, so now that we're done with 30 minutes of gaming, let's quickly take a look at the temperature right now. So as you can see, the temperature is hovering around the 39.5 to 39.6, 39.7 degrees, right around the camera area where I'm pointing right now. And of course, it is hovering around the 39 degrees and lower also. And when you take it lower as well, it's still around the 39 degrees. So overall, the phone is around 39 to 39 to around 40 degrees overall. And that's generally the case when you play games for around 30 minutes in a controlled environment where it is not very cool. So yeah, so that's the gaming performance on the Snapdragon 765G. Now we'll move on to the next phone. Alright, so now I'm going to be testing gaming on the G90T to see how it compares against the Snapdragon 765G. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do as usual is run through the graphics settings on PUBG to show you guys what it can achieve. And of course it can do HDR and Ultra as well, smooth and extreme as well, and of course HDR and Ultra. So that is possibly the maximum you can get on a super mid-range smartphone in 2020. Now I'm going to jump into Call of Duty and quickly play 30 minutes of the game on this phone. Alright, so now we're in the game. Let's quickly take a look at the graphics settings first before we start the game. So you can see that the G90T on Call of Duty can do only very high and high, which is a bit of a letdown considering the 765G can actually do very high and high and max. So that's definitely a bit of a letdown. So I'll just do very high and high and get all the effects that I can get, but for some odd reason you get bloom on the G90T, which is generally not possible. Anyway, so that's a good thing. So let's just quickly hit the timer and jump into the game and play a few games of Frontline. Alright guys, so I'm 15 minutes into the Call of Duty gameplay on the Redmi Note 8 Pro, which has the G90T, and it's been pretty smooth if you must ask me. I have had a blast playing on this, and I couldn't really tell the difference between playing on this and the Snapdragon 765, except for the fact that there were a couple of frame drops here and there when there was blasts happening, which didn't happen on the 765G, which was a far smoother experience. But also the other thing that I noticed is that it's kind of getting hotter than the 765G. Anyway, we'll measure it 30 minutes after we're done with the games to actually corroborate that claim, to check if it's actually hotter than the 765G, because that's generally the case with the G90T. It had this problem of heating. So yeah, so I mean let's play a little bit more and understand where it stands. One thing that I definitely like to say is that while the benchmark scores are higher on the 765G, the gaming performance compared to the G90T doesn't seem to be so much more better or anything. In fact, the G90T, which will be available in much cheaper phones, is actually pretty good at gaming. Alright, so we're at the last 2 minutes of testing the G90T with Call of Duty, and it's held up really well again. And I just want to test the heat levels on the phone currently, and we're getting badgered really badly. Having said that, the gameplay itself on Call of Duty, I'm guessing all the Redmi Note 8 Pro lovers would possibly love their phone. The only concern right now for me is the heating issues, but apart from that, it's been rock solid. Except for a few times when there was a lot of action happening, then there were a couple of times when the graphics, the frame rate would drop a bit. But apart from that, it's been a steady flowing frame rate that I got generally during the gameplay. And yeah, I think in a minute we'll also be done with the game. If we get done with the game before the minute ends, we will also stop the timer at that very specific point. And the game's done. So we've been defeated, unfortunately. Let's quickly head out of the game and take a look at the temperature levels right now. So I have my heat gun. So we'll wait for the camera to focus on the heat gun at the moment. And looks like it's not gone beyond 39 degrees. I don't know if you can tell. Yes, of course you can right now. So it's at 39.4, 39.5, which is similar to what we got on the Snapdragon 765G. So I am logging a 39.6 maximum. This was the area around which I felt it was hotter. Oh, there you go. See, that's what I'm saying. So it's at 41 degrees around this area, 41.8 actually, 42 degrees. So yeah, so that's what I was saying. So it was around at 42 degrees maximum, 41.9 actually. Even now it's hovering around 40.7 when it's cooling down. So that was the gaming experience with Redmi Note 8 Pro on the G90T. Now we're going to be moving to Snapdragon 730G after this. Alright, so for the final round, I'm going to be testing out the POCO X2 now with the Snapdragon 730G. Unfortunately, the final bit of the G90T test, you might have seen some bad footage. That's because the light was actually dying, and I had to finish off the footage anyway. So I apologize for that. But let's move on and first check out PUBG and what graphics settings can the Snapdragon 730G run at. From what we've seen till now, the G90T can actually run at HDR and Ultra, which is also possible G90T and the 765G. And of course, when I tapped on HDR, this option will be available on your devices soon. So essentially, you can only do HD and high. So this is possibly not the best super mid-range chipset for gaming. I think the G90T, when it can do HDR and Ultra, that's definitely gives it a bit of a leg up. I'm surprised that PUBG actually hasn't optimized for the Adreno chip inside Snapdragon 730G on the POCO X2 and other phones yet. I think it should be able to do HDR Ultra soon. Let's wait and watch. Anyway, so right now I'm going to be exiting out of PUBG. So now that you're done checking with the PUBG settings, let's move on to Call of Duty, which is what I'm going to be playing today. So first things first, let's jump into the settings and see what kind of graphic settings that you can get with Call of Duty. And surprise, you can actually get very high graphics, which wasn't possible on the G90T. Plus you get bloom and depth of field and ragdoll and anti-aliasing, all of it. So yeah, so Call of Duty apparently defaults at a higher setting on the Snapdragon 730G compared to the G90T, which is not the case for PUBG. Which basically means that there is some sort of optimization happening here for Call of Duty for Adreno based GPUs. Alright, so I'm going to start off with the timer and we'll start playing a few sessions of Frontline on Call of Duty on the 730G. Let's see how it goes and how is my experience overall. So we're done with 15 minutes of gaming on the 730G inside the POCO X2, and to be entirely honest, I didn't even notice the time. It's actually gone up to 17 minutes and I had a blast playing the game on the phone till now. It's been smooth sailing, also because I think POCO has like better touch response rate than the other two phones that I tested. Plus it's extremely powerful as well for Call of Duty at least. So I did notice a couple of frame drops here and there because this is not necessarily the most powerful processor as such, but it is still been smooth sailing and it looks really good as well on this big display. And most importantly, the other thing that we need to check at halfway time is whether this is heating up. And just like the other two phones, this one's also heating up. So it's not getting as hot as the G90T did. So let's wait and watch for 30 minutes of gameplay to end to figure out where the heating is. Until then, just enjoy some more of the gameplay. Alright, so this is going to be the final match that I play before we shut down and take a look at how much it has heated. But until now, the POCO X2 with 730G has held up admirably well. It is getting slightly hot, but we'll check at the end of the session. So this is one of my favorite maps, Nuketown. It's pretty fast paced. Alright, so this is some intense firefight happening right now in the game, but I think we're almost done with 30 minutes, so I'll have to stop midway, which is cool. Thankfully, I'm not playing a ranked match, so that's good. Alright. How much do you guys love the Annihilator? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright, so let's quickly take a look at the temperature. So we realized that the G90T on the Redmi Note 8 Pro was the hottest. It went up to 42 degrees, and that seems to be the case with the 730G as well. It's going up to 42 degrees. So evidently the 765G is a much more power efficient processor compared to the G90T or even the 730G. Both of these get really hot after just about 30 minutes of gaming. Alright, so let's bring all the three phones together once again. We have Of course, the fingerprint laden POCO X2, which has the Snapdragon 730G. We have the G90T inside the Redmi Note 8 Pro, still a very powerful phone. And of course, the newly launched 765G toting, vivo X50 Pro, which is actually a camera-centric phone, and it's got some great camera features. So, which is possibly why it's expensive. But I'm guessing the 765 should come in phones priced from 20 to 30,000. Now, in that price range, the 765 is actually a fair bit of jump over the other two, plus you also get 5G. So yeah, the 765 is actually a really powerful processor, and compared to 730G and the G90T, is definitely more powerful for gaming. And what I noticed is that it is power efficient, and it also doesn't heat up as much either. The heat control is far better especially when you're gaming, and when it comes to scores, it is also higher in Geekbench and AnTuTu. So what did you guys think of this comparison? Do let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, this is Ershad from Mr. Phone signing off. Goodbye and Godspeed, my friends.